What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the latest episode of The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. And in today's episode, we are going to be discussing a brand new series called Greater. This series is going to kick off this weekend here at the church. As always, I'm joined by our lead pastor, Brandon Connor. And we're glad that you're watching and listening, so stick around. We've got an awesome episode planned for you today.
You're listening to The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. The goal? To know Jesus a little better so we can live like him a little more. And now, here's today's host, Wes Feldner.
All right, welcome to today's episode of The Loop. My name is Wes, and I'm the creative arts pastor here at Mosaic Church. I've got Brandon Connor here in the studio with me. And before we move on, Brandon, into talking about the new series, I just feel like at the beginning of this episode, we got to hit pause and we got to talk about what happened in our last series, Who Needs God, because it was incredible. So before we dive in, just give us a quick look back and tell us about that series and what we saw, what happened.
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying, I think one of the reasons it was so great is because it was a total team effort. We had Miguel doing all kinds of great things to promote the series. We had the partners meeting where we talked about why we're trying to do this series at the beginning of the year and what was the big vision and the idea behind it. And our people really rallied around us. I mean, they started saying, hey, man, I'm going to get my kids and my grandkids who don't go to church anymore. I'm going to invite my neighbor or my coworker, sharing this stuff online. And we saw great things.
We did.
Because it was a total team effort. I think our online views increased by about 500 from last month to this month. And so we saw people watching in ways that they just hadn't been watching and tuning in before. We saw people coming to faith in Jesus, people who were in service, as well as people who were just watching online. In fact, I remember talking to Zach, who was doing some of the follow-up calls and talking to people about decisions that they were making in this series. And he was talking to this one lady, and she said, man, I gave my life to Jesus this weekend. And he was like, that's great. What service do you come to? And she goes, oh, no, I don't come to into the building. I only watch online. She goes, I just don't know if I'm ready to actually cross that threshold. But what we know is that we're able to use the technology to get the message of Jesus out there to people, and people were responding and realizing, wow, I really do need God in my life, and they're starting relationships with Jesus. We saw a lot of people get baptized.
Oh my goodness.
I think it was like 12 ended up taking that
service.
step. And so for us, coming out of, a couple of years of COVID and trying to start a new year, it's just been awesome to see how God's working in such a great way in the lives of people here on the Gulf Coast. And just glad we got to be a part of it, and love just seeing the impact that can be had when we really do work together as a team. Yeah,
it was a great way to start a new year.
It was.
As a church. So I'm excited for what's ahead. So let's talk about that. So I got to ask, what's up with this new series? The series is called Greater, but when I looked at the show notes here and we started to talk about stuff, is the series is literally a symbol. Yeah. So, what is up with that?
Do you remember Prince?
I do.
The artist formerly known as it's kind of like that, Prince, right? Yeah. So, what we're doing in this series is we are calling it Greater,
right?
But we're using the mathematical symbol for greater.
Gotcha.
And you see this. I don't know if you have noticed, but you see them on T-shirts. You see them on the back windows of cars where people have the greater sign. Yeah. He is greater than I.
There you go.
Kind of stuff. And so what we're doing is we continue to work our way through the Gospel of John.
Yeah.
We've started this whole idea that, man, Jesus came into the world because we really do need God in our life.
Yep.
But now as we start to get more and more into the person of Jesus, what we're going to discover is that he really is greater on so many levels. And so really excited about it.
That's great. So the series is called Greater, but I guess another question that I have is why is this series important, or why do we follow a series like Who Needs God with a series like Greater? So kind of connect the dots for us.
Yeah, I think that's the way faith works. is, you start by recognizing, oh man, I really do need God in my life.
Yeah.
He hasn't been a priority. I've never recognized that I've got a sin problem. I realize and admit and acknowledge I need God in my life. And then we start to follow. But what happens when you follow Jesus by faith is the more you get to know him, the greater you realize he really is.
Yeah.
And so what happens in your life is your faith starts to grow, and your willingness to follow him starts to grow with it.
Yeah.
You start to realize, wow, he's got a greater plan for my life. He makes me into a greater man or a greater woman. He makes me into a greater friend. Following Jesus really is a greater way to do life. And so we want people who may have just kind of come to know Jesus to be able to discover Jesus on a greater level, see how great he really is, because we know that it will inspire them in their faith, not just to believe in Jesus, but to follow Jesus wherever he may lead them in life.
That's right. Okay, well, that makes a ton of sense. That's awesome. So let's talk a second about who this series is for, because our last series, we had a very specific target. I mean, you talked about the partners being like, we're setting the stage for this. We're like, this series is for the skeptics or the pre-believers or, people that we would say maybe are on the fringe of, the church or Christianity or whatever. So who is this series for? Is it for the same target? Are we going after a different target? Yeah. All of the above? I don't know. Tell me.
I kind of have three different audiences in mind.
Yeah.
And so for me, I know that there are a lot of people who came to the last series who needs God, and their mind is still not made up.
Yeah, they're still on the fence.
They're still on the fence. They still have questions. Some of them are going to the community group that we have specifically for skeptics. People have all kinds of questions and doubts. And so for those people, this is a great opportunity because that question is not going away.
Yeah.
In fact, I love one of the things that Miguel's doing with that last series is he's creating a landing page where we can push people when we're encountering people who are neighbors or coworkers or friends, and they're going, man, I just don't need God in my life. We're going, you might want to rethink that. And we can push them to that landing page, and then they can kind of watch that series because that question is not going away for people.
Oh, sure.
And so for all those people who are still kind of struggling with that, we want this series to be a series where they continue to grow in their appreciation for Jesus.
Yeah.
And so when you realize his greatness and why he is greater on so many levels, my hope and my prayer for those people who are still a little leery, who aren't ready to jump into the deep end of the pool, they'll come to see Jesus for who he is, and then they'll choose to follow him.
Yeah.
For the people who came to the series and they did decide, man, I want to become a follower of Jesus, this is going to be great for them because, like I said a minute ago, this is one of those things that the more they get to know him, the easier it will be for them to follow him.
Natural next step.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I would also say this is a great series for those people who have been around for a really long time.
Career Christians.
Career Christians. I love that verbiage. Yeah, the career Christians, because one of our core values here at Mosaic is worship.
Yeah.
And so what we want for people who are the career Christians, for the people who have been fully devoted followers of Jesus for a long time, is we want to help them discover in a fresh new way how great Jesus is so that they worship him in an even greater way than they have been. I think it's easy for people who have been following Jesus for a long time to get a little stale, for things to just kind of go through the motions, and we want to awaken people so that they realize, wow, I have forgotten about the greatness of Jesus, and they appreciate him and they worship him in ways that maybe they haven't in a really long time.
Yeah, that's great. So it sounds like everyone should attend this series, like a lot of our series, like everything. We just want you to be here and to take part of it. So let me ask you another question, like what do we want people to do with the series greater? I'm sure when we're finished, like you said, we're going to have lots of evidence that God is greater than anything else that we could devote our time or our attention to. But what do you want people to do with this information? What do you want people to do with this series? What action steps should we be preparing ourselves for? Maybe speak to those three groups specifically, and what should we be looking to do with this information or this series that we're being part of?
Yeah. So this is a series where if I were thinking action steps for people, I would want to drive people to think about this word sacrifice.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I am making decisions about what's more important in my life, I'm always weighing them out. And when I realize, hey, this one's greater than this one, I give up these things that I may love for something that I love even more. And that's sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so what we want people to do as they're thinking about what's it look like for me to be a follower of Jesus, we want people to come to that place in their life where they're willing to make some sacrifices.
Yeah.
The people who followed Jesus in the New Testament, in the Gospel of John, they made sacrifices to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
When Jesus said, "Follow me," they left some things that they love. Maybe it was their jobs, maybe it was the comfort of their homes, but they walked away from things that they loved so that they could follow Jesus, that they loved even more.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, it may be, you're walking away from some things, you're sacrificing some things that you love because it's hindering you from being able to experience Jesus in a greater way. You may be walking away from some relationships that you care about because you know that they're interfering with your relationship with Jesus. It may be that we're having to walk away from some things so that we can help other people become followers of Jesus. In fact, that's what we saw in the last week of Who Needs God, is that the reason we still need one another, or the reason we still need this thing called the church, is because it's not just about us and God. It's about us helping other people become followers of Jesus. And so sometimes that means we got to get out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
We've got to sacrifice the comfort that we love for what we love even more, which is seeing people enter into an authentic relationship with Jesus Christ and realizing their need for him.
Yeah. Man, that word comfort is so important because it's uncomfortable sometimes to be a Christian. And sometimes we...
Awkward.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so being a Christian pushes us into some uncomfortable situations. Like, I think about sharing our faith or whatever. So talk about that. Talk about those uncomfortable positions that we sometimes have to push through and sacrifice our own comfort so that we can help others.
Yeah. What I would want people who are followers of Jesus to understand is it's usually about a 10-second window. It's not I think we play it up in our mind like
we're going to be uncomfortable forever.
Awful. Yeah, I'm never going to be able to get out of this uneasy feeling, and it's not that way.
Yeah,
what we have to understand, man, there is something that is so great on the other side of this conversation. My friend or my family member actually having a relationship with Jesus, that I will push through 10 seconds of things getting really, really uncomfortable before we can settle in and have a fairly comfortable conversation about something that was just hard to get into in the first place.
Yeah.
And so I just think people, we got to be able to push through that.
Yeah.
There is too much riding on this for us to say, hey man, I'm just going to live in the comfort zone. And, I remember there being this old Penn and Teller. Do you remember those guys?
Comedians.
So, they're kind of comedians. They're guys who do this Vegas show and they're illusionists. And one of those guys, he said, he had a guy come up to him after a show in Vegas. And the guy gave him a Bible. And he said the guy had heard that he was an atheist. And he said, I still am an atheist, but I appreciate the guy giving me the Bible because this is a guy who really genuinely believes that if I don't come to Jesus, I'm going to spend eternity in hell.
Yeah.
And he said, what's up with all the other Christians who don't care enough about people that they will share their faith, or he said proselytize, or share their faith with people who, according to them, they're on the highway to hell.
Yeah.
And so I think it's this, even from an atheist perspective, it's like they're looking at the Christian community going, man, if you people really believe what you say you believe, why don't you care enough about me? And it's because we like our comfort.
Yeah.
And we got to give up our comfort that we love for something that we love even more, which is our fellow man. And
That's right.
Have a conversation with them. And here's the deal. It's up to them and God to figure out whether or not they're going to go to heaven or whether they're going to become a follower of Jesus or not. That's not our job. We don't have to change people.
Yeah.
But we do have to have conversations with people because we love them enough that we'll dare to do that.
Yeah. I think even more than that, even more than sacrificing our comfort is, thinking of, in a broader sense, this series that we're calling Greater. I think, when we find something great, we kind of have a desire to share that. You know what I mean?
Dude.
Like it doesn't take me long to come in on a Monday morning and be like, Brandon, you got to check this out, or have you seen this, or have you,
Yeah. So, a great example. So Miguel, a couple of weeks ago, he was like, Brandon, you ever been into the Batman movies? I was like, yeah, not really. And so sure enough, I was flipping through the channels the other night, and I came across, and like it was like Batman Begins, and then like The Dark Knight, and then The Dark Knight Rises, and it was like, man, Steph and I started watching those, and it was like, man. So I'm coming in, I'm like, Miguel, that was everything you said it was, man. That thing was great. Then later in the week, so Jonna, my assistant, she comes in and she goes, Brandon, have you heard of this game? It's called Wordle. Have you heard of this?
Yes.
Dude, I am obsessed.
I've not played it, though, because I refuse.
Oh, you're playing it in staff meeting today.
Oh,
it's how we're kicking off staff meeting because I love it. It is so great. Yes, it is.
You have to share it.
Now I want to share it. And so I was like, what a great way to start staff meeting today.
I'm going to call it Nerdle.
No, it's Wordle, and it is such a fun game. So if you've never played it, you got to check it out. Really
there's
simple
something
game.
about like
there's something about when you fall in love with something, you want other people to experience.
That's the same with Jesus. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And once that light bulb clicks and it's like, you know what? This is greater than anything else that I could devote my time or my attention to, and I want to share it with you.
Absolutely.
It's really easy to give up your comfort for somebody else's eternity.
I don't feel weird at all that you just called it Nerdle, even though like I'm in love with Wordle. And so like, it's like some people see it that way. And it's like, well, hey, you're the idiot, not me. Like, I'm sorry you can't appreciate greatness over here. But I think that's where Christians have to get.
Yeah.
Like if you don't see the greatness of Jesus, then you will so live in a place of insecurity that you'll just be like, I better just keep this to myself.
Wow.
Why? Because you're not all that convinced that it's great. When you become absolutely convinced of its greatness, you don't mind sharing it.
That's right.
You look at other people going, man, if you don't want it,
you're missing out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, hate that for you. Maybe someday you'll open your eyes and see the greatness. And I think that's where Christians have to get. Those people who've been followers of Jesus for a long time just got to get to that place in their life where they go, wow, it is so great. I have no reservations about sharing it.
Absolutely.
Doesn't say anything about me if they can't appreciate the greatness.
Yeah.
Might say something about someone else. So.
Yep. There you go.
Good stuff.
Man, that is some good stuff. All right, one more question before we wrap up. Talk to me, like, do we have any homework for the greater series? Like, where are we at in the book of John?
Yeah.
Like, any books or resources, anything? I don't know.
So
you tell me.
Like second week of February, and we're finally into John chapter 2. Okay. So making great progress, but come on, it's been well worth our time. Hey, I don't feel like it's been like, dude, are you ever going to get there? Like, so we are in John chapter 2. So if you want to go ahead and read ahead, you can jump into some of the next couple of chapters. And then I would say there's a book, great book. It's by a guy named Philip Yancey, and it's called The Jesus I Never Knew.
It is a great book.
And it is one of those books where it's a classic. It's written a long time ago. It's not a new book.
Oldie but a goodie.
But it's one of those books where, man, you start thinking about the Jesus I never knew. It's like it's like a discovery into the greatness of who Jesus really was and who he really is today. And so we want people to check that out if they're into, picking up a book and doing a little extra work on the side.
Yeah.
I think it'll just add value to the series that we're getting ready to jump into.
Little supplemental materials.
Yeah.
So we got our homework.
Yep.
And the greater series starts this week. So we'll see you Thursday at 7 p.m. or Sunday at 9:30 and 11. And do us a favor. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you give it a share, send it to friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, whoever, and invite them to sit with you this weekend at church. It would be great to have you and all of those guys with you as well as we launch into this greater series. It's going to be awesome.
Can I throw out one more thing?
You can.
This is like a
go for it.
Personal request.
Surprise. Here we go.
Personal request of our people.
Yes.
Our 9:30 service has been slammed.
It has.
Like crowded to a point that it's a little uncomfortable. Okay. And so I love it because I love having the energy in the room. But I will say this, if you're like, man, I don't really care when I come to church on Sunday, it would help us if some of our people would start coming to the 11 o'clock service.
Absolutely.
There's a lot more room at the 11 than there is at the 9:30, and even more room on Thursday night. And so if you're looking for a little bit more space, man, help us out, free up some room at that 9:30 so that service can continue to grow with new people. And then we can maybe fill in the gaps a little bit at either the Thursday night service at 7 or the Sunday morning service at 11 o'clock.
Or better yet, you could serve one and sit one.
Even better. They're serve that 9:30.
Exactly.
Because at 9:30, we've got so many people we're trying to care for and love on, and kids that we're trying to make sure are in a safe place and growing in their relationship with Jesus. So
all kinds
of coffee
stuff.
bar. So help us out.
Yeah. So
good
come
things
to the
are happening.
Come to the 9:30 service.
If good things weren't happening, we wouldn't have this problem.
That's true.
So we're excited. It's a good problem.
Yeah.
But we need the people who love Mosaic, who call this place their home, to help us out a little bit.
That'd be good.
Awesome.
Sounds great.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We will see you this week as we kick off our brand new series called Greater. You guys have a good one.
You've been listening to The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. For more information, visit us online at mosaicgc.com.